Okay. And there is also what is referred in your industry as rifling pertaining to firearms. What is rifling?
Rifling is the twisting of the grooves inside the barrel of the firearm.
Right. Okay. Right. Now, you've testified that the firearm, the exhibit firearm here is an auto-loading double-action center fire pistol. Can you briefly explain that?
Explain that?
This auto-loading double-action center fire pistol, because I'm not familiar with firearms.
My lord, when we refer to a center fire, we are referring to a firearm that has the firing pin that's right in the center of your cartridge case, on the primer of it. And when you're referring to a semi-automatic, semi-automatic is a firearm that for every shot you fire, you have to pull the trigger. So in case of a pistol, what you do is you cock the firearm, you pull the trigger, it fires a shot, the slide cycles, it ejects the fire cartridge case, it loads another firearm. You must release the trigger and pull it again. It becomes a semi-automatic. Where when you're referring to a full automatic, in full automatic, you just pull the trigger once, it continues shooting until you release that trigger.
And you have also referred to pattern matching. What is pattern matching?
The pattern matching, in terms of the theory of identification, is you look at the pattern marks that are transferred to a firearm. You have different patterns. It depends on what type of a mark is it.
Yes.
With a bullet, on bullet mostly, we look at the striations because your bullet passes through the barrel of the firearm. In case of a pattern, it's when the imperfection is on your breech face, or maybe the shape of your firing pin has got a specific pattern that will always be transferred to all the exhibits, cartridge cases which were fired in that firearm.
And there is also what is called, and I believe that is the method that you applied in examining, comparing, and coming to the conclusions with regard to the exhibit bullet in this case, that which is said to be consecutive matching striae, or consecutive matching striations, yes. So we'll call it CMS from here. Do you know about it?
That's correct, Madam.
And for us also that are not holistically learned, please explain what CMS means and how does it operate when you do the comparison.
My Lord, the CMS, as I've explained, are the consecutive matching striations which are created by the barrel of firearm as your bullet passes through the firearm. When you do your comparison microscope, when using the 3D,
yes,
you're expecting at least to say that there's sufficient agreement of marks on your bullet. It's when you see 6 matching striations, or maybe a set of 3 matching striations, 2 sets of 3 matching striations on your bullet, and they must be relatively on the same positions.
And those striations that we are looking for identification are contained within a specific groove of the projectile. Is that correct?
Within a specific meaning. That's why I'm saying they must be in the same relative position.
Okay. And then you've said that you are looking for a set of 6 matching striations in the same relative position, or a set of 2 by 3 consecutive matching striations within the same relative position.
It can be 6 matching striations on one groove, and yes, it can have 3 matching striations, set of 3 matching striations on different grooves, but they must be on the same relative same position. Like if you have groove 1 that has at least 3 matching striations, and on the other groove, let's say groove 3, there's another 3 matching striations. On both items, they must be on the same grooves. It must be groove 1 and groove 3. So those are what we call the same relative positions.
Now, is there a standard that 6 matching striations? The standard that is used, they must be consecutive without a break. So when you count them on the exhibit bullet, on the test bullet, it's what we call the railway tracks. They must align with each other. They must match this side and that side, and they must be of the same, as you said, width, peaks, ridges, furrows, and the like. Is that my understanding of how you apply this theory?
When you say they must be on the same groove?
No, I say the consecutive. Say, for example, you're talking about the 6 matching striations. That will be, we are looking for 6 on the exhibit bullet, matching the 6 on the test bullet to come to our conclusion that this exhibit bullet was fired on this exhibit firearm, right?
When you align them with the microscope, when you see both of them, the striations must align.
Yes.
If it's 6 matching striations, they must align. All 6 of them must align. Even if there might be spacing, the spacing on the left must be equal to the spacing on the right. And if there's a gap, you count your striation lines. If there are 6, it's enough to make it positive.
I think, Captain, we're gonna be confused. Let me continue with this, and when we come to your charts, we'll ask them to be beamed here, and we'll look at your results on the aspect where you said, I found 6. We will do that exercise. On the other one where you said, I found 5, we'll do the same exercise, count them in court, so that everybody is on the same page and we understand what we are talking about. And similarly, on the 2, you'll say, on this one where I found 2, it's this one and this one. And then we can understand how this CMS really should be applied. So let me continue with my cross-examination. Now, back to the terminology that you also use. When you examine a bullet, sometimes there are what are called skid marks or slippage marks. What is a skid mark and what is a slippage mark?
When a shot is fired and your bullet is inside the chamber, it's in the cartridge inside the chamber, a shot is fired. The minute your bullet leaves the chamber, it gets into the barrel of the firearm. When you speak of slippage, your bullet, it slips into, it doesn't go into not the chamber, into the barrel straight. It slips before it gets into the chamber, into the barrel. So you have the skid marks when it slips, or the slippage before it gets into the chamber, into the barrel. Yes. So those marks will be different, will create some other markings that are, it's difficult sometimes to match the skid marks or the slippage markings on your exhibits, because you can see all the firearms. When you shot, instead of getting into the barrel, they slip a little bit, and then because what you're looking at the barrel is, normally the barrel is a little bit bigger in diameter than your bullet. So when it leaves the chamber, after the shot is fired, it slips and then it gets into the chamber. Because the barrel is a little bit bigger, the barrel will grip it so that it can go through all the grooves. So the slippage is when it leaves the barrel, the chamber, and getting into the barrel.
Lama maxi ombuza ngawo noma ke ukhuluma ngawo ke ama slippage nama skid marks isikhathi ke lapho na ke uma usidubula ke bese kuthi manje ke inhlamvu lena engaphakathi kulona ibhobolondo isiyaphuma kuyona ke i-chamber iya manje kule la ngaphambili kusona isibhamu lokho kubizwa ngokuthi ke i-chamber yilawo ma marks akhuluma ngawo.
And how does the slippage or the skid mark affect the carrying of the marks onto a bullet?
Onto the bullet?
Yes.
It can create markings which are different from and those markings, as I said, it's difficult because your slippage will not happen exactly the same way. Yes. So it will change. It will create the markings which will sometimes be impossible to match with the firearm, but you will see that there's a slippage on this bullet.
Ama marks ke lawo azohluka ke kuya ngokuthi ke kwenzeke kanjani ke ngawenza ke ama marks azohluka ke kusona isibhamu.
So in other words, the slippage or the skid mark will create inconsistent markings. The markings won't be the same on a particular bullet to bullet.
That's why I said it's difficult to can match the slippage markings. Those markings, it's difficult to can match them and say that they were fighting the same firearm.
Ingakho mshilo ukuthi lawo ma marks lawo abizwa ngokuthi ke ama slippage ke kunzima ke ukuthi kwaqhathaniseke ukuthi cha setshenziswe isibhamu esithize.
And what we must understand is not all the firearms will have the slippage.
Yes.
It will depend on the firearm. If the firearm has been misused or it's been used many times and it's starting to worn out, that's where you will find mostly the slippage on the firearm. But the new firearms, you will hardly find the slippages on them.
Futhi ke ngeke ukuthole lokho kuzona zonke ibhamu kuya ngokuthi ke isibhamu sisetshenziswa kanjani futhi ke nakangakanani. Kodwa ibhamu ezinjalo ngeke ukuthole lokho noma ke amathuba ukuthi ke ungathola ke lokho kancane kakhulu.
Sorry. Don't ballistics refer to that slippage as you are trying to explain to us? That language, they use the language indeterminate. Have you ever heard of it?
Indeterminate is when
yes.
you do your comparison, you can see the markings, but they're not enough, sufficient enough to can say they are fighting the same firearm. With the slippage, you can see the slippage markings, but those markings also, you cannot determine whether, so we make it inconclusive. If you have only the slippage, you don't have proper markings, you can make it inconclusive also, or indeterminate.
Kule gama ke inkantolo ibiza indeterminate ukuthi ke lapho uyabona ke noma ke uyakwazi ke ukubheka ke kodwa usuyathola ke ukuthi cha le impawu noma lama marks ke lana ke awanele ukuthi ke ungasho noma ke usithupha isinoma ngokuphelele ukuthi cha kwenzeke kanjeni.
Sorry, I've got to understand this. When you say inconclusive, what do you actually mean?
Inconclusive means that you can have positive inconclusive or negative inconclusive.
Right.
When it's positive inconclusive, you have markings, similar markings, but are not sufficient enough to can say that it's exactly this firearm that has fired. So because of the markings are not sufficient enough, you can just say that it's inconclusive, meaning you cannot determine that this bullet was fired in this firearm.
Irrespective of the other characteristics contained in the bullet.
With the class characteristics, you can see the class characteristics.
That's it.
The class characteristics, let's say it's all the Cs.75 will have 6 right twisted cartridges. Those are the class characteristics.
Yes.
So you cannot make a bullet positive on class characteristics.
Okay.
You need to look at the individual markings, which are made by the firearm also. So you can say that the class characteristics matches based on the class characteristics, only class characteristics, but there's no individual markings. So they are not sufficient enough. You can just say that it's inconclusive. You cannot conclude by saying this is the right firearm that was used.
La uma ukhuluma ke ngayo inconclusive usho ukuthi ke yebo kukhona ke okubonayo kodwa ke ngoba ke kungena ama marks athize abhekiwe noma ke kufanele ukuthi atholakale abonakalayo ke lana akwazi ke ukusho ukuthi cha ke yakusho lokhu ke ngesiqinisekiso ingakho ke kusetshenziswa igama elithi inconclusive akwanele.
Let me just jump onto that one before I go to the next aspect. This aspect of inconclusive finding. in simple terms, when an examiner says, I have examined, we are talking about our case here, I've examined the exhibit bullet, and I examined the firearm that was handed to me as having emanated from one of the accused persons in this case. Having examined that firearm, I come to the conclusion that it is inconclusive. In other words, you are saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, I cannot say for sure either way that this is the firearm that shot this particular bullet, or this is not the firearm that shot that particular bullet. Are we on the same terms there?
It depends on your conclusion. You can say it's positive, inconclusive. I can see the similarities,
Yes.
but they're not sufficient enough.
Yes.
So that will make it inconclusive, or positive, inconclusive. And you can say that I can see the class characteristics, the grooves, diameter of the grooves are the same, the number of your twisting grooves are the same, the width are the same, but I cannot see any similarities here. Then you can make it negative, inconclusive, because there's nothing that matches.
Kuya ngokuthi ke utholeni ke ngoba ke mhlawumbe usungathola ke ama class characteristics noma usungathola bona ke ama grooves lawo kodwa ke noma uma ubheka ke usho ukuthi cha yebo kukhona ke engikubonayo kodwa ngenxa lokho ke engikubonayo ke akwaneleke ukuthi ngingasho ngesiqiniseko ukuthi isona ke lesi sibhamu noma cha akusona ke lesi sibhamu lesi.
Let me give you 3 examples, all of them inconclusive. When there's some agreement of the individual characteristics and an agreement of all the class characteristics, is that an inconclusive finding?
When you have
Some agreement of individual characteristics
Yes.
and all class characteristics, agree.
then you can say it can be a positive, inconclusive.
Okay.
Uma lana usukhuluma ngokuthi ke kunama class athile ke atholakalayo ke ungasho ukuthi ke lokho ke yebo ke iloko kubiza ngokuthi ke positive noma ukuthi ke yebo akwaneleke asikona konke kodwa ke usufaka yena ke upositive.
The second one, when we've got an agreement again of all the class characteristics, but there's a disagreement of individual characteristics because you could not reproduce what you want to see, the striations, consistently. So because of lack of repeatability or reproducibility, you say it's inconclusive. Are we on the same time?
When you say you can see the class
The
characteristics,
class characteristics, but because on the exhibit bullet or exhibit casing, you cannot produce the same marks that you want to see on the exhibit bullet. They cannot be reproduced.
you can make it inconclusive also. Then.
Okay.
Nalana ke uma ukuthi ke no kunama characteristics noma kunokuthize ke okubonayo ke kodwa lokho ke akwaneleke nako ungasho ke ukuthi cha lana isiqiniseko asikho.
All right. Now let us talk a bit about this case, 636 of 10, 2014, the one that you started working on the 27th of October 2014. Your testimony is that you were called by Captain Bentley for assistance at 13511 Kutlano section, Mzamo section, first arrest, where a prominent goalkeeper by the name of Mr. Robert Senzo Meyiwa was shot. Correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Yebo kufakazi bami ke ukuthi ngishilo ukuthi ngazo i27 October 2014 ila ngathola khona ke ucingo lubuya ke nako Captain Bentley ukuthi ke ngizolekelela ke e13511 Kutlano Street eMzamo section.
And you-
ekwabulawa khona ke nozinti owaziwayo.
And your further testimony is that you attended the scene with Warrant Officer Ntini and Lieutenant Colonel Makati. Is that correct?
I think Makati was also a warrant officer or captain.
Oh,
Can't
okay.
recall.
Cabanga ngishilo ukuthi ngihamba naye untini kanye naye ke uMakhathi.
And these officers were from the same office as you, from the Silverton offices?
That's correct, madam.
Okay.
Nabo ke babebuya ke kuhofisi engisebenza kulona eSilverton.
And Mr. Ngomezulu has asked you this, but I'm going to ask you again. What were their specific roles, Makati and Ntini, those officers at the scene, in assisting you?
My lord, they were there to assist me with anything that if I need assistance, maybe to take measurement, or if I need anything, I would ask them to assist me. So when I was busy analyzing the scene.
Ukuba khona kwabo ke lapho kwakuwukuthi ke bazolekelela noma bangisizeke uma kuwukuthi ke ikhona ke into endinga ukuthi bangisize ngayo.
And regarding their assistance, do you know if both of them made statements or made entries in their, if they were warrant officers, they obviously have diaries. Do you know if they made any entries regarding their involvement at the scene?
Any entries in their diaries?
In their diaries or written statements, whatever notation, recordal that they made?
My lord, if I take my colleagues with me to assist me in the crime scene, I'm the one who's doing the reconstruction or the examination. I'm the one who's going to submit the statement. They don't submit the statement because they're only there to assist me.
Uma kuwukuthi ke ngihamba nozakwethu la ngiyosebenza khona ke mina ke uzofika asebenzeke khona lapho imina ozothi afake istatement akusibona.
And you arrive at the scene, you find Captain Bentley together with a myriad of other police officers. Did you there and then speak to Captain Bentley, or you just announced your arrival to him and then you waited to the side?
My lord, as I said, they were busy processing the crime scene when I arrived. I only informed him that I'm here, I've already arrived, but they can finish first with their processing, and then I'll.
Uma ngifika-ke ngishilo-ke ukuthi-ke kwaba ukusho nje ukuthi sengikhona-ke bona-ke sebengaqeda-ke ngaloko abakwenzayo.
And normally, I know that with LCRC that when they come and they are the second responders, the first responders were uniformed officers. One of the uniformed officers will take the LCRC officer through a walkthrough of the scene before processing. Did anyone take you through the walkthrough of the scene? Either Captain Bentley or here Bentley refers to Masumbuka, who took you through the scene.
I can't recall who took me through the scene because, as I said, before I entered this, when I was on the door, they've told me that they have 2 shots fired, but they cannot locate the other bullet hole or bullet damage. Then where I was standing, I could see that mark on the tire. I pointed at them as, there's another bullet mark that you are looking for.
Angikhumbule ukuthi ukhona-ke noma kwakubaningi umuntu-ke owahamba nami-ke engitshengisa-ke kwindawo yesigameko, kodwa ngishilo ukuthi nkathi-ke ngime khona-ke esicabheni laphaya bangitshela ukuthi-ke isibhamu saqhuma kabili, kodwa-ke ababoni ukuthi eyesibili yashaya kuphi. Ngase kwindawo engangime kuyona-ke ngase ngiyabatshengisa-ke ukuthi enye inhlamvu yashaya khona laphaya.
And at any stage or at some stage before you conducted your trajectory examination, your crime scene reconstruction, did Captain Bentley brief you now about what had transpired there?
What I knew was that there was a shooting and then the deceased was shot inside the house. The shooting occurred in the house, and those are the only marks that we found.
Engikwaziyo mina ukuthi-ke kwadutshuka noma kwadutshuka khona laphayana ukuthi-ke uma ufike wadutshukelwa noma washonela khona-ke endlini futhi-ke nama-marks ekhona laphaya.
But who told you that? Was it Captain Bentley?
My lord, I cannot recall whether it was him or somebody who was with him, because he was there as to oversee this crime scene management team that was on the scene.
Angisakhumbuli noma kwakuyena-ke uBentley noma kwakuwomunye-ke owayenayo ngoba wayelaphaya yena-ke ukuthi-ke abheke-ke kulapho ababelapho-ke laba bizwa ukuthi-ke i-crime scene management.
Okay. And if Captain Bentley would be called to this court and say he personally briefed you, you wouldn't dispute that, correct?
I wouldn't dispute that.
Okay.
Uma engeza-ke la inkantolo noma engabizwa-ke lana asho athi kwaba uyena-ke umuntu owangichazela-ke angeke ngikuphikise lokho.
My lord, I request clarity. When they say briefed you, brief about what?
About the scene, what had transpired and what you are required to assist them with.
He couldn't even see whether there was a second bullet, Bentley. He had to tell him that there's a second bullet there on the floor. I'm just mentioning it. That Bentley is a lay person as far as ballistics are concerned. From what he says, he's on the scene. He says he knows that he's told that there were 2 bullets fired, but he can't find the second bullet where it was fired. And here comes there, stands, and says, oh, this is where the second bullet was fired at. Am I correctly interpreting?
That's correct, my lord.
Yiko longo engishilo vele ukuthi ngafika-ke laphaya wangitshela uBentley ukuthi akazi ukuthi inhlamvu yesibili kuphi noma ishaye kuphi, yaba yimina-ke umuntu omtshengisayo ukuthi ishaye kuphi, yashaya kuphi yesibili.
Okay. And you were informed, because the court now talks about you were told they can't find the second bullet. So we are talking about sequence of bullets. Were you told that another bullet was already found?
Not the bullet, the impact, the bullet damage on the floor.
You saw the bullet damage?
Fragment was found, and the other bullet was found, but they could only find the 1 bullet damage on the door.
Okay.
But that one on the tile, they couldn't find it, or they were not aware that it's a bullet mark.
Ayisibona ukuthi-ke inhlamvu ababengayitholile bayithola-ke kanye naleyo futhi-ke eyayilimeleke, kodwa bathola nje ukuthi ulimele isitapha, ukuthi okwesibili-ke yiyiphi indawo yesibili elimele, yikona-ke lokho bengakuboni engabakhombisa kona.
And after the processing of the scene by Sergeant Musia and Warrant Officer Mutlatlo, were you shown the exhibits, especially, let me be frank and brutal, the forensic, the ballistic evidence that they collected on the scene?
Yes, I saw it on the scene.
Okay.
Yebo-ke emuva kokuthi-ke umsiya-ke kanye naye umhlahlo-ke besebenzile-ke lapho, yebo ubufakazi-ke lobo babulapho ngabona khona lapho kwindawo yesigameko.
And then, upon their finishing, and when I say they are Mutlatlo, Musia and others who were processing the scene, then you take over, you do your scene reconstruction, your trajectory reconstruction.
What I did there, only took measurements of, I took photos of the position of that bullet mark and the bullet damage on the door, and I took the measurement. There was not much to do on the scene.
Kwakungekho okuningi-ke engakwenza-ke lapho, kwakuwukuthi nje kathi isithombeke salokhu kumele kwakusesabheni nalokho kwakuphansi-ke nokuthi ngikaleke futhi, akukho okuningi kwakufanele ngikwenze.
Did you personally find or observe any bullet or fired projectile, casing, whatever related to ballistics on the 27th of October at the scene? Did you find and remove?
My lord, the bullet fragment that was there and the bullet that was there were already collected by Warrant Officer Mtlatlo and Musia. They were already in the seal bag. And those are the only exhibits which were at the scene. When you search the scene, you couldn't find anything else.
Inhlamvu-ke kanye nenye-ke inhlamvu lena kwakuyona-ke ngathi-ke elimeleke babe sebeyitholile-ke futhi ifakiwe-ke kwisikhwama sezobufakazi-ke akukho kunye-ke okwatholwa-ke noma obheka-ke khona lapho.
Yeah, but the question that I'm asking is that you personally did not remove any ballistic evidence on the 27th that you took away from the scene?
No.
Mina-ke abukho-ke ubufakazi ophathelene nazo-ke ibhamu noma-ke iy'nhlamvu engabuthatha-ke mina khona lapha kwindawo yesigameko.
And then on the 28th of October 2014, you, together with Warrant Officer Nkandla, attend the postmortem at the Jamestown Pathology Center. Is that correct?
That's correct, my lord.
Kuyiqiniswa-ke ukuthi nge-28 October 2014 mina-ke kanye naye-ke owaye-warrant officer Nkandla sase siya-ke emakhazeni eJamestown.
And the examinations that you conducted there, or your participation there, is captured in paragraph 9 to 11 of your exhibit X13 capital A or X13A, which is the first affidavit of 22 pages. But we are not going to go there because it's not pertinent for my cross-examination. I'm just putting to you that you conducted certain duties at the postmortem as well.
That's correct, my lord.
Yes.
Yebo kuqiniswa khona ukuphile-ke ngakwenza-ke lapha ngalelanga lange-28 October 2014 khona emakhazeni eJamestown.
Now, just before I move on again, let's return back to the issue of Captain Bentley. Your testimony is that you were told that two shots were fired inside the kitchen. Were you also told about a third bullet that was shot by Captain Bentley?
A third bullet fired?
Yes.
No, I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Akukho-ke engikwaziyo-ke mayelana nalokho ngibuza ukuthi-ke khona-ke la ibhamu sakhoma khona-ke ihlandla lesithathu.
My lord, I've got the statement of Captain Alan Mark Bentley, commissioned on the 3rd of December 2014. The commissioner is, they've helped me out, B.G. Jones. It's A82 of Foslora 63610-2014. And then the CR number is 143/2014. I'd like just to read this statement on record. Don't have. Lieutenant Colonel, do you have the statement of Captain Bentley?
No, I don't have that statement.
Okay, I'll ask Sergeant Mokola to assist us. We'll revert to this point once we find that statement, because I don't have a copy thereof here. I've only got my copy. Do you have it? Can I read it? My lord, would it be proper for me? Let me get the court's direction. If I read the statement on record, then when we find, we'll refer the captain to it. Okay.
I mean, you're going to hand it up anyway.
Yes.
So you can read whatever you want to put to this witness, if you say.
Okay, thank you, my lord. I mean, that's it. The statement reads as follows. Alan Mark Bentley states under oath in English, I'm a captain in the South African Police Service stationed at the Gauteng CR and CSI team, Johannesburg Central, with telephone number that I'm not going to read on record. On 2014-10/27 at 8, I was requested to attend to a murder scene at 13511 Peterloo Street, Vosloorus. I was informed that the deceased was a well-known soccer player, Senzo Meyiwe. On the above-mentioned date, at approximately 9:10, which is in the morning, the CSI team arrived at the scene and were received by the duty officer of Springs LCRC, Captain Masombuka. During a short briefing between Captain Masombuka, Constable Musia, and the Gauteng CSI team, it was confirmed that the shooting incident happened on the previous night, the 26th of October 2014 at 2000 hours. It was also established that Lieutenant Matebula and Constable Musia of Springs LCRC had started processing the scene and had collected certain exhibits. The allegations, as indicated by Captain Masombuka during the briefing, was that unknown men entered the premises and demanded money and cell phones. There was an altercation between the robbers and the deceased in the kitchen of the premises, and 3 shots were allegedly fired. It is alleged that 2 shots were fired inside the kitchen, and the other one as the suspects were fleeing. The deceased stumbled to the lunch area and fell. He was then rushed to hospital where he died. A decision was taken during the briefing to investigate the scene as if no investigation was done. During the first walkthrough of the scene, Captain Masombuka indicated the place on the kitchen floor where a bullet point was discovered and collected by Constable Musia. He further also indicated to me a bullet hole on the inside of the kitchen door. During the walkthrough, another bullet point was discovered on the countertop in the kitchen behind the containers in close proximity to the bullet hole in the door. I contacted Captain Mangena telephonically and informed him that we needed his assistance on the crime scene. Warrant Officer Titi Nkandla from the Gauteng CSI was identified as the member responsible for processing of the scene. The CSI team then proceeded to process the scene, assisting Warrant Officer Nkandla with the identification, collection, and documentation of potential evidence. On arrival of the ballistic team, Captain Mangena was briefed by myself. His team then proceeded to examine the scene. He also indicated to me that he would be attending the postmortem of the deceased. I undertook to indicate place, date, and time to him. A decision was also made that Warrant Officer Nkandla of the Gauteng CSI and Constable Musia of Springs LCRC would attend the postmortem of the deceased on the 28th of October 2014 for the purpose of documentation, which included photography and collection of additional evidence. It is sworn and attested to, like I said, on the 3rd of December 2014, and the Commissioner of Oaths is B.G. Jones.